What if I told you that almost every major study shaping our health, our food, and even our beliefs about what's safe or dangerous is quietly influenced long before it ever reaches the public? That the reports we trust as scientific fact are often designed behind the scenes by the same industries and power brokers who profit from the study results? We're taught to believe research is neutral, independent, and objective. But when you follow the buck, you discover a maze of hidden foundations, academic partnerships, and friendly nonprofits designed to disguise where the money truly comes from. In fact, research has shown that 85 to 90% are ultimately funded by people that benefit by the results. Now, why would someone deliberately conceal the funding of beneficial science? Once you see how the system works, you can't unsee it. In this video, we're going to break through the illusion of independent studies and expose the machinery that controls what you think you know. How would that change your perception of published study results if you knew Big Pharma or Bill Gates paid for the health study that you're relying on? We were told for years to follow the science, to trust the experts, and that the data doesn't lie. But most people now realize that none of that was true. The science was wrong. The experts were controlled, and the data was manipulated and generated to create a worldwide fear-based pandemic. Imagine the power of an entity that can induce the entire world to beg for an inadequately tested injectable drug. It was made possible because the WHO, or World Health Organization, failed to validate the data or to put the welfare of humanity above deep state controllers. WHO's purpose is to coordinate global health efforts, guide international public health policy, and support countries in preventing, controlling, and responding to health threats worldwide. That's scary to me, guys. That one man, the WHO Director General, approves and formally issues the World Health Organization's official recommendations, declarations, and announcements. Incidentally, he was elected 1 year after Trump took office the first time. Was he installed to set up Trump with the pandemic? I don't know, but don't ever underestimate this epic global enemy. So it's really important to know who writes the checks, sets the questions, and controls what gets studied or published. Most people don't realize how simple it is for powerful figures to hide their financial fingerprints. A donor can give a large sum to a foundation, and that foundation can turn around and fund a study that happens to support the donor's interests. By the time the research is published, the original source of the money is invisible. All you see is an innocent-looking foundation supporting academic work. That's the entire point, to distance the donor from the outcome and do it in a way that looks legitimate. So the obvious question is, why in the world would somebody want to hide the funding behind a study, and why is it legal? Now, here's where it gets interesting. Many nonprofits exist almost entirely as pass-through organizations. They don't do much themselves. They collect money from one place, send it to another. This provides a shield that keeps the real funding source off the books. These groups often have only 1 or 2 employees, yet millions of dollars flow through their accounts every year. When you follow the money, those people organizing the transfer of money are also taking their large cut. Once you recognize the pattern, it's etched in your mind. Universities add another layer. They have dozens of institutes, programs, and specialized centers, each with its own budget and donor relationships. Money can land in the Center for Global Strategy or the Institute for Social Policy, and from there it funds research that lines up perfectly with larger, darker agendas. It's all public, all legal, and nearly invisible unless you know where to look. In recent years, industry and business funding make up the majority of medical and health research in the United States. Statistically, business-funded research and development is comparable to publicly funded work, and often dominates trials or product-oriented studies. Clinical trials that lead to new drugs or treatments are overwhelmingly industry-funded. Multiple analyses show more than half, sometimes 60 to 70%, of highly cited trials are openly sponsored by pharmaceutical or biotech companies. Their designs, endpoints, and publication decisions are often influenced by those corporate interests. Food and nutrition science show similar patterns. When food or beverage corporations sponsor or fund nutrition studies, the results tend to favor the sponsor's products. What a shock, huh? That's not a theory, guys. It's a documented pattern across peer-reviewed literature. Remember, those figures are openly funded. Then there's the ones funded surreptitiously by industry. Because of this funding control, we should treat nearly all science as potentially influenced, which leads to a big question. How many studies are truly free from corporate or major interest influence? The bottom line, based on multiple reviews by independent analysts, is that probably no more than 5 to 15% of all medical or food studies are truly independent. You heard that right? You can reliably only trust about 5% of the articles you find, even in official publications like JAMA or PubMed, which is the government search engine for medical articles. By independent, we mean not funded or indirectly influenced by industry, corporations, or private foundations tied to corporate interests. So let's break down some of the most common mechanisms behind hidden influence. First, there are foundations and so-called charitable nonprofits, which we want to believe are helping people, but corporations set up or donate to foundations, which then grant funds to universities. When a study gets published, it typically cites the foundation, not the corporation behind it. So when you see a foundation funding it, research the ownership and money into the foundation. Then there are donor-advised funds, or DAFs. Corporations or wealthy individuals donate to these DAFs, and the DAFs distribute grants, also effectively masking the original source of the money. This way, it's almost impossible to know who really provided the funding. Another mechanism is corporate-funded academic centers or endowed chairs. A university lab might be running on corporate money or gifts, but when individual studies are published, they don't always declare the company as a funder, even though the lab's entire infrastructure depends on them. Contract research organizations, or CROs, and subcontracting are also common. Companies hire a CRO to run clinical trials, and those CROs may subcontract to academic or clinical centers. In the end, publications usually list the CRO or the center as the sponsor, not the original company. We also see independent think tanks, NGOs, and trade associations publishing reviews, white papers, or meta-analyses. These documents are sometimes presented as objective science, but their budgets often come from industry through donations or membership dues. Then there's ghost funding and opaque disclosures. Some studies just leave out full donor lists, or they use vague language like support provided by unrestricted grant. Even today, many journals or papers don't require full transparency about the donor chain. And finally, lobbying and political influence play a big role in shaping what gets funded. Even public funding agencies can be influenced by lobbying, and appropriations are often shaped by industry interests. So, public funding isn't always as neutral as it might seem. The PBS news station is as biased as they come, and we were paying them through USAID before Musk shut it down. So how do you investigate something like this? You start exactly where most people stop, the study itself. Look at who published it, what department they were part of, and what partners or collaborators are listed in the acknowledgements. Those small details are often clues. Next, you move to the paperwork that no one bothers to examine: public filings. In the United States, nonprofits must submit a document called a Form 990, and these forms list the grants they receive and the grants they give. Universities often publish similar reports. Buried inside those filings are the names of foundations and donors connected to the very study you're investigating. But the real breakthrough comes when you look at the people behind the organizations. When the board of a foundation is stacked with former executives from the same corporation, or former officials from the same political group, it tells you almost everything you need to know. People fund what benefits them, and their board members are the breadcrumbs. There's a great database that I've talked about before that connects the people to NGOs and even pulls up tax records for you. It's called Data Republican, and I'll link it in the description if you want to research this funding game. Once you start comparing timelines, the pieces fall into place quickly. You might find that a major donation arrived just months before the study was launched, or right before a political push or media campaign began. These timing coincidences aren't coincidences at all. They're strategy. And finally, you compare the study's conclusions to the interests of the funder. When the research magically supports the exact policy, product, or narrative that benefits the donor, the motive becomes obvious. It's not about science or truth. It's about influence disguised as objectivity. And it's not the exception. It's the rule. I'm gonna leave you with some down and dirty tips that should trigger red flags or green lights. At the bottom or top of the article, in the fine print, look for these more independent, safer phrases. No external funding. This study received no outside support. Funded by internal university resources. Red flag phrases which mean industry influence include supported by unrestricted grant from, funded in partnership with, industry collaborator, public-private collaboration. This research was made possible by a grant from the foundation. If the funder's name is unfamiliar, assume industry until proven otherwise. You can also read the Conflict of Interest (COI) section and look for tiny clues. This is the single easiest trick for everyday readers. If you see anything like author has served as a consultant for, received speaking fees from, has ongoing research support from, or serves on an advisory board for, then the study is not independent, even if the study itself wasn't directly funded by industry. Look under the author names. Some green flags that suggest they might be more independent include Department of Public Health, Department of Environmental Science, Independent Researcher, and School of Arts and Sciences. Red flags suggesting industry alignment include Department of Nutritional Sciences, which is heavily food industry partnered, Food Innovation Lab, Center for Pharmaceutical Outcomes, Biotechnology Solutions Program, and anything with industry, biotech, food, nutrition science, innovation, or biomedical partnerships. Many of these departments exist because companies fund them. Scanning the small section of acknowledgements often reveals what the main text hides. Red flag phrases include, "We thank blank for providing materials." "We acknowledge technical support from blank corporation." "We appreciate feedback from blank industry advisory group," and "The equipment was provided by." If a company gave them equipment, data, samples, or technical support, then the study is influenced even without direct funding. Next, look closely at the wording of the conclusions. Industry influence studies never speak plainly. Red flag vocabulary includes no significant harm detected, appears safe, more research is needed, risk is minimal, findings are inconclusive, and moderate intake is acceptable. These are industry protective phrases. Independent studies are blunt, like, "We found X increases Y." "Results clearly demonstrate," and "strong evidence suggests." Clear language signals fewer constraints. Industry-funded studies are typically shorter, with fewer participants. Studies that are 4 to 12 weeks long are too short to detect long-term harm. Industry also prefers unrealistically low doses to make the product look safer. Conversely, independent studies last many months or years and are much harder to manipulate. Count how often the authors say things that sound like sales language. Red flag sentences include, "This offers exciting possibilities," "These findings support wider adoption," and "Our results demonstrate the value of." If it sounds like marketing, it probably is. There's many other clues that a savvy investigator might glean, but I'll leave you with this last one. Ask yourself whether the results actually match the headline, or if the headline is a misrepresentation of the results. If the headline screams certainty but the data underneath is mixed or inconclusive, the narrative has been shaped. By using nothing more than this video before you, you can quickly spot whether the research is honest or quietly influenced by industry interests.